Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the latest episode of the Adopt 365 podcast. I'd like to welcome my co-hosts, first of all, Megan Warren,
Hello.
and last but not least, Anthony Charman.
Hello.
So all of you that are tuning in, please make sure that you're liked and subscribed to our podcast. It really does make the difference. So really do appreciate your time, wherever it is that you're listening to this or watching it on YouTube, that you've done that. And we'd really like to hear some comments from you. What would you like us to be covering in 2023? What matters to you? What are you looking at? What are the things that your users are asking about the most? So please comment below what you would like us to be covering in 2023. Today's podcast is all about the features that have been released this year, 2022, in Microsoft 365. We've picked the best of those features to talk to you about today. Microsoft are always good about telling us about what's up and coming, but sometimes it takes a little bit longer for those features to actually release us, to be available in our tenants. So we're going to be looking at those features that are now generally available and saying actually why they matter to us and why they think that's something that maybe you should be looking at. But before we do that, let's do our usual around the room. What are the features that have stood out to you most? What are you most excited about in the last month since our last podcast? Megan, over to you. What stood out to you?
So my one is one that we're going to touch on in this podcast because it is a relatively new feature with Q&A in Teams meetings. So allowing you to manage the questions and the answers that are coming into your Teams meetings rather than just using that chat functionality. So I won't dig too much into it right now, but that's the one that I've seen recently and I'm excited to use. And I think it will actually change the way that meetings work and how structured they are as well.
Brilliant. Great to see that feature. Let's talk about it a little bit more in a moment. Anthony, what's your one standout for this month?
Well, I've got two actually. There's two just really small features that have come to Teams over the last 12 months that I make a lot of use of. The first one is the ability to chat with yourself. Just really, really useful to be able to go and, if you've got a message somewhere, if you've got a thought that goes through your mind, very easy just to pop it into that, chat message with yourself and pick up on that. And I use that all of the time just for remembering things. And for just trying to bring things when I have a meeting with someone, I'll just pull up that chat and see what I've popped in there. The other one is the simplest thing possible, which has become kind of universal throughout the whole of Teams now, is just pop out. Just that ability in any of the applications, in a chat, in any aspect of Teams, to be able to pop out a window rather than find yourself like I am today in the office, just with a small laptop screen, trying to squeeze everything into a single screen. Just being able to pop out the whole application into a window and being able to see it clearly there is so useful. So yeah, those are my two.
Fantastic. Well, Anthony, I think cheating a little bit there. Your top feature has turned into top two, so I'm going to follow trend. I'm going to take a top two as well. The first for me is on Microsoft Teams rooms, and I can see if you're watching the video, Anthony's rocking a Teams room behind him there. But specifically on the Neat boards, they're running the latest version of the Microsoft Teams room now. You can walk up to a Neat board and you can hit the whiteboard button, and you can start whiteboarding without the need for a meeting or anything like that. Very much a version 1 iteration of this feature. You can't save it or share it with other people outside at the moment. But I'm sure those features will come, and we've been waiting a long time to have that whiteboard technology instantly available to us on the fantastic Microsoft Teams rooms like the Neat board, but also like the rooms that Anthony is there behind with quite a large touchscreen. So that's great to see that feature. The second one that I just want to shout out a little bit about is something that maybe isn't for you champions and users, but maybe it's something to ask your IT teams about, and that is Microsoft Intune. So Microsoft Intune is the functionality that allows your IT team to effectively manage and secure your devices to deliver the best user experience, but also that security. I've spent quite a lot of time looking into that technology, speaking to customers and getting involved with that. So maybe have a chat with your IT team, ask if they're using Intune, ask how the experience could be improved with that. It's a really, really good functionality. So I think without any further ado, let's get on to the main subject. We're wrapping up towards the end of the year. I'm rocking my Christmas jumper. So we're going to be looking back about what those features that have been released this year and which ones stood out to us. So Megan, what's your first standout feature?
So my first one is that you're now able to mute notifications whilst you're in a call. So we spend a lot of time in meetings and we get a lot of notifications, and those two do sort of coincide, that when you're on a call, when you're in a meeting over Teams, people still message you, they still try and call you, and people miss the status, right? So we can't blame them all the time. It does come. But then, as the person in the meeting, I get distracted by that chat message, or I get distracted by who called me, and then I'm listening to the voicemail or something like that. So, what you're able to do now, if you go into your settings in Teams, you're able to say, when I'm in a call or a meeting, mute my chat notifications and calls that come through. It just means that you're going to be a lot more productive and a lot more focused in that meeting rather than getting sidetracked. The only thing I would say about that is if you do that, that's great. Just remember the second step, which is to go on your mobile and say, when I'm active on my desktop, mute my phone notifications, because you can go and do it in Teams on the desktop, mute the chat and calls when you're in meetings. If you haven't done the phone bit, it will still come through on your phone. You'll still get distracted, and then there was no point doing the first bit in the first place. So, yeah, mute chat and calls whilst in meetings is a really good feature that just allows us all to be more focused when we're in those meetings that we're in.
Fantastic. Always like a productivity hack that allows me to just be a little bit more focused. Multitasking is old fashioned now. We should be unitasking, focusing on what matters, what's in front of us. And I think that's probably just one of the features today that we're going to be talking about, where there's a change to notification settings. So always worth checking in on there and seeing what the latest settings are, and are they optimized for the way you want to use the product.
I'm going to add another cheeky one in here, which is not functionality that's there already, but there was some functionality announced the other day around raising hands. There's nothing worse when you're holding a meeting than people raising their hands and just leaving them up. But they're writing a bit into the software there. Barry's trying to be funny, which never works. Which will actually, once you've raised your hand in a meeting, it will listen, and once you've spoken, it will automatically drop your hand for you, so it knows that you've done that. So that's forthcoming for functionality. But I just like the way that Microsoft haven't just developed a product here and fixed it. There's just constant new things coming into it, and they're intelligent kind of AI based bits and pieces that are being added to it as we go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that. I hadn't realized that was a thing, and makes obvious sense for Microsoft to be doing that. So yeah, nice bit of bonus content there from Anthony. So the next feature, then I think it's over to me, is then Cameo in PowerPoint. And this is a really good functionality. And I don't know if, like me, I really like a Teams meeting. I like everyone to have their cameras on. I like to be able to get a bit of eye-to-eye contact. I like to be able to kind of read people's expressions and what's going on in the meeting. And then you put a PowerPoint up on screen, and generally you lose all that unless you arrange things in the right way, and then you end up focusing somewhere else. And those in the meeting could just be looking at your slides rather than having that sort of insight into what's going on. So we've had various different modes in Teams, like standout mode, where you can look like a newsreader. You can be superimposed in a static place on top of the content you're sharing. But we now have Cameo available in PowerPoint, and this allows you to control how you're going to appear in your presentation when presenting live in Microsoft Teams. So I think you get it from the insert menu. I actually didn't know, but I saw Megan demonstrating yesterday on one of our Dot365 videos. You can change the way that window looks from a square to a circle, so on and forth. You can resize it. Maybe on one slide you could be full screen, on another slide you could be in the bottom left. So you've got complete control as to how you're going to appear during your Microsoft PowerPoint live presentation. I've already used this feature a number of times. Works really well when you're presenting to a large group and you want to be the person that is able to hold the floor and be able to expressively explain something. So great feature. Make sure that your Microsoft 365 apps such as PowerPoint are updated to the latest version, and I'm seeing most people now being able to access that under the insert menu. I don't know if either of you have used that feature. I don't know, Anthony, if you've used that at all.
I've tried it out. I've not used it in anger yet, but I like what you're saying there, that ability to be able to see people and be interactive on the slide. I think it stops people just looking at the slide and falling asleep. So I think there's a more interactive stuff we can do within meetings to keep people alert is really good stuff. That's why I like the question and answer functionality that Megan's going to talk about shortly, in that you can get people to interact with your presentations. So really, really good stuff coming in Teams.
I've also seen it. A lot of people talk about Cameo being used for sort of virtual meetings. I actually saw someone using it for a hybrid meeting. So some people were in the room with them, and then some people were virtual. And whilst as the person that was in the room, you see them in person and you see them on the slides, it's still likely that if you're in person, you're looking at the slides where they are, so you're not actually looking at them as the presenter. And for the people who were virtual, they obviously didn't see the presenter because they were just looking at the slides full screen. So for both audiences, whether you were in the room with that presenter or if you were virtual, having Cameo on that PowerPoint really made you interact with both the slides and the presenter as one. So it was the same experience for both people. And I just think it's not just for virtual meetings. I do think it's useful for those hybrid meetings as well.
Well, I think, as Megan always says, if you see this functionality, just try it out with a colleague. It's not until you try a lot of these things you actually realise how useful they are, and how they can transform your meetings. So yeah, just grab a colleague and set up a meeting, and just pop your face into some PowerPoint and practice that element of it. It works really well.
I've been
Brilliant.
proven wrong. My favourite thing in 2022 is that Anthony does listen to me. Amazing. You've
do.
heard me.
I know probably it's almost going to be over by the end of this podcast, but our 24 days of Advent, is it?
Yeah.
Megan's been doing a feature a day on there on LinkedIn, and I've learned so much from that. And it's not just about, I know the technology, it's just seeing it demonstrated and thinking about how you apply it to your organization that makes a big difference.
Fantastic. I hadn't considered that hybrid use case on there, Megan. So I think that's really good. We want that equality between people that are in the room and out and about. And I think that's a good example where you can offer that same experience irrespective of where people are. And I think kind of on to our next feature, which Anthony, you're going with, associated with Teams rooms. And this is all about that kind of meeting equality from that side of things.
Yeah, and this is Front Row, which is, I get involved in lots of Teams meetings. We've helped lots of organizations set up Teams equipment, and it makes a big difference. But the more you work with it, the more you realize that, it has its challenges. The main thing is when you build a room and you put a camera at the front, it's quite a big room, you get quite a long view of what's going on in that room, and people at the back don't really feel involved in the room. And that's an area that actually kind of, in addition to Front Row, is going to really make a big difference is when we get these panoramic cameras, which are available, which we are put in the middle of the table. Everyone in the room will be able to look at the middle of the table, and we'll be able to get face views with separate video streams for each person into those meetings. And that fits well with Front Row as well. The Front Row functionality is really trying to bring the people in the meeting who are joined remotely physically into the room at the same eye level and with the same kind of view of someone who would be sat at the front of the meeting room. I'm actually sat there now underneath the screen here, and if I was sat with the people around me, I'd be looking right into their eyes at eye level. And I think that's what Front Row is really going to do for us. I think it's going to mean that when we design rooms, we put bigger screens in, because it's going to take a chunk off the bottom of, along the bottom of these screens here to put the headshots of people in there. There's a lot of additional functionality coming along with it, where the audio will adjust so that the person who's set at the left-hand end of the screen's voice will come from the left-hand end. And so you'll get that kind of spatial placement in place. But I think it's really going to make a big difference for all of us. And most of our Teams rooms will be designed in that way in the future, because we are in that era now when, some people are in the office and some people are out of the office. And we need to give equality of presence at those meetings to all those people at the same level. We don't want people to feel like they're left out of the meeting because they're in a remote location. And also, we don't want everyone just in the meeting to have a brainstorm and forget people. I think, one of my big bugbears has been cameras, people leaving their cameras off. So easy. Early on in Teams, Megan and I were delivering lots of training to organizations, and you found that you missed people out who hadn't bothered to put their camera on. And I know there's a lot of reasons why people won't put a camera on, but with the you have to help me here. Then avatars, that's the word I was looking for. With the avatars, I think that's going to help to make that, and we're starting to see that not appear in our tenants yet, but we're starting to see lots of demonstrations of in the inner circle of Microsoft being able to show what those avatars are going to look like. But yes, I think we're going to have to rethink our rooms for Teams. We're going to use Front Row a lot more in that environment. And I think these the 360 kind of panoramic cameras that can then split people into individual faces are going to start to play a big role in that area. And yeah, throughout the whole of this, I'm just thinking how excited I am about Teams and what's been done in Teams, and how Microsoft are just spending so much time and effort doing intelligent things in the Teams environment that are making our lives better. When we started this journey, I would constantly be coming across people saying, oh, but Zoom's much better for this and Zoom's much better from that. I don't think I've heard that conversation for a long time now. And I'm able to try and keep people interested in what's going on in the Teams environment. So that's me.
Yeah.
Don't get me started on Teams rooms. I think they're fantastic, and I will just wander on. So I'll call that a day now.
No, I think the front row technology is really good and really impressive. And as you say, those room designs will change because of it. And there's a few things that I've seen. So one is that, is it the aspect ratio of the screens is changing, and I can't remember what the aspect ratio is. It's 21:19 or something like that. These ultra wide screens are now being utilized for the reason that you say, and I'm also seeing some smaller rooms configured with front row. So it might be an in-person room with 6 seats curved around the screen at the front of it, and then another 6 people joining remotely, but it feels like the people are sat on the other side of the table with you, because you've got a nice big very wide screen, and you can see the people then sat directly opposite you in the meeting.
Yeah, I think design of rooms is really, really going to become important. So it's good to think about that and think about the sound quality and where you're going to place microphones and things and what equipment you're going to use. So yeah.
Definitely. So Megan, the next feature review is kind of a bit of a well-being feature. Do you want to dig into that with us?
Yeah, definitely. So we've had delay email send for a while now, but people were missing the sort of delay send of chat messages. So earlier this year in 2022, Microsoft introduced delay send for chat messages within Teams. So really simple, rather than typing out your message in chat and then clicking send, you right click the send button and you get to pick a date and time for when you want that to be sent to people. It just means that you, as somebody, maybe you're working in an evening or a weekend, or you just quickly want to send someone a message but they're on annual leave, for example, you can still get that off of your task list. You can still get it out of your head, but you don't have to disrupt that other person. And I think that's a really key thing, because at that point, the well-being of both of you is taken care of, because it's not just sat in your head and you thinking, I must send that when they're back on annual leave, and you either forget or anything like that. But equally, you're not disrupting that other person in their own personal time. So a really key feature that I think we needed for a while. The only thing I will say, and that people have sort of experienced, is once you select the date and time, it then comes in the composer box saying when it's going to be sent. Now, people have made the mistake thinking, oh, okay, that's now scheduled to send. You do have to press that send button again once you set that date and time to actually schedule it. Otherwise, it's just sat as a draft in your composer box. So that's the only thing. I think there's a little thing that people miss if they haven't, or if they aren't aware of it or haven't used it before. You have to double send it as such just to schedule that. But a really great feature, and one that I've used more than I care to admit, if I'm honest.
No, I think it's one of those really good features that allows you to get that balance between your priorities and other people's well-being and their priorities, right? So great feature to see that included. Used it for a long time in Outlook, and great to see that now in Teams. So Anthony, we're coming to you for the next feature, a feature all around Microsoft Teams channels. Do you want to dig into that?
Yeah, so it was probably the most long-awaited bit that we've heard about for a long time, and it was never going to hit the thing. But I think last June, shared channels was released within Microsoft Teams, and it's just settling in nicely now. I think people are starting to get used to how they can be used and how they are not to be used. There's 2 aspects to it. There's shared channels within your tenant, so across your tenant, the ability to share bits, shared channels in that way. But where I'm seeing it used more and more is into organizational shared channels. So I'm working with a couple of organizations at the moment who are working on a joint project. They want to be able to share channels. They want to be able to share their chat conversations, and so their channel posts and also the files within that channel. and that's been very easy to configure. There's a certain amount of stuff that needs to go on in the background with Active Directory to set up the B2B links there. But once they're set up, they really do work well. And as files are saved to that channel, you see them arrive simultaneously in both tenants. And it's a really good working solution. What I would say is the technology is quite simple, but it's building the rules and the regulations around that. You need to be aware that the lowest common denominator around multi-factor authentication for accessing things comes into place. So if one organization hasn't got MFA set it up, then people in that organization can still get hold of those files without multi-factor authentication. So it's also drawing up things like your acceptable use policy across the two organizations and getting those in place. So the technology works really well. It's a really nice way to present information to people. It's a very workable environment. But there are some kind of business rules that we need to build around that to make sure that things are secure and that people know exactly how to use those things. So yeah, all very good. Really, it took a long time to come, but it really works well now.
Great feature. I think great version 1. I think we all still hope for a wider, easier option to configure maybe in the long run, which I know some of the alternative platforms have got. But I think certainly the scenarios that you've discussed there, Anthony, it fixes that immediate problem for a lot of organizations.
I think the main challenge, the main area that we struggle with is planners. You can't share a planner across shared channels at the moment, which is often the first thing that people want to do if they're working on a joint project together. So yeah, that I'm assured will come soon.
So on the subject of planner, then nice segue there, and I think Megan, you're probably the planner queen. It's something that whenever you've got your screen open, you've always got a planner with multiple tasks that always looks very pretty. I think it's fair to say it's taken you a while to fully embrace it, but now it's, I believe, part of your everyday process. Do you want to talk about the feature in planner that you wanted to share?
Yeah, definitely. And I will take that title as planner queen. I thank you very much. I'll take that. Yeah, so the new feature was one that, again, I was personally requesting from Microsoft for a while, and I think a lot of people were, in that you can now set reoccurring tasks in Planner. So that was a box that was missing, but now when you go in and you click on your task card and open it up alongside the priority, the due date, all of that, you now have whether it's recurring. And you can either set that for daily, weekly, anything like that, but you can also do it customized. So you can say every 3 days, for example. So it just means that we don't have to tick the task off as completed and then add it back in if it is reoccurring. Or the thing that I saw people doing was they'd complete it, but rather than ticking it off saying it is complete, they'd just move the due date to the next week. Now, whilst they're aware that was complete, for the rest of the team that are using that planner, they may be questioning, actually, was that done or not? So the fact that we have recurring tasks mean you can mark it's complete. The rest of the team know it's complete because they can go see that in the completed tasks, but it's not deleted it. You haven't got to recreate it. It's just there for the next time that you've got it set as well. So, yeah, I think that's really key. And then this isn't a new feature. It's just one that I've really adopted recently. You both got 2 at the start, so I'll take a new one whilst we're talking about Planner, is the fact that we now have sort of 25 labels that you can add to a task. I've started adopting labels within my team that I work in here at ComputerWorld. And once you've got those labels set, once you start using them, it does make such a difference when you're using things like filtering in Planner, because I can filter everything by the stage that it is. So we've got a stage label, whether it's in creation, implementation, complete, everything like that. And it just means that the filtering is a lot better. So I would say if you are using Planner and you haven't filled out those labels, just take 10 minutes to think what sort of labels, extra information you'd like to add to your tasks, start using them, and then do that. But yeah, recurring tasks in Planner is the top feature. Just a little hint from me to start using labels as well if you're not already.
I really like Planner, and one of the reasons I didn't adopt it wider when it first came out was the recurring tasks. And I
Yeah.
think you've been able to do it in To Do, which can come together. But I think if you are in that sharing kind of scenario, so naturally to me, I think of an IT team, maybe a service desk that has daily checks to do, like have you checked the backups, have you checked the firewall logs to see what's going on, whatever those might be, really good. The only question that I've kind of got is how do you handle those missed days? Because it's always nice to see when a day has been missed, but you don't want to leave the task open forevermore. So maybe the ability to not close a task as completed, but archive a task that hasn't been completed as, okay, you missed it and it's there for prosperity, but it doesn't stay on screen as Monday,
Mhm.
Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you've got open tasks left. But yeah, again, great example of a technology, and I'm sure people will find the right way to use it in their departments.
Yeah, definitely.
So I think the next one's on me, and this is looking at Yammer, part of Viva Engage, as we've seen a bit of a rebranding and coming together with SharePoint. And this is a new feature into Yammer called Storylines, I think it is. And this is the ability for you to have your own personal board, community, wall, whatever it is that you want to call it. So a place for those that are following you to read a little bit more about you, maybe some more personal stuff. So there's two scenarios that I've seen people use it for, and actually that I'm trying to adopt it for. The first is maybe to share things that you're working on. So in my role as CTO here at ComputerWorld, I'm trying to share a bit of strategic thinking around our technology portfolio and planning. Those that follow me will get alerted depending on their notification settings to pull back into what we were talking about in Teams earlier on. Another great place to check your notification settings. So if I post something, it isn't posted to all company, it isn't posted to a specific board, it's posted to my storyline, and those that are following me can get to see that, or those that choose to click on my profile and view my storyline will see that. The other place this could be really useful to, and something that I really like to encourage, is people to use this to show a bit of themselves. In this kind of hybrid world, we don't spend as much time with each other physically. We don't get those water cooler moments where we can find out where Anthony went cycling this weekend, or the latest toy that Megan bought for her dog, or whatever that would be. So this might be a great place to just share a little bit more of you. So those people that are following you get to see those things. Hopefully you get to build a bit of rapport. Maybe you take that away to a Teams conversation or a Teams call every now and then, and hopefully it just helps you connect with your employees. So I quite like to see these features. Once again, though, it's a technology feature. Your culture needs to make this something that your organization does. And this is where the kind of the people persons, Jennifer Bennett is our people person here at ComputerWorld, or our chief HR officer. She did a podcast with me. I think it was the last Doc 365 podcast. And this is where bringing together people and technology really matters. Whilst Yammer now has storylines and it's great for building those personal connections, it won't happen unless it's something your organization embraces.
I do believe those sort of features like storylines, etc., are pulling on the social aspect that we all have in our personal life, or a lot of people do with things like Instagram, that Instagram stories, you're always using those. So I think that's what people and Microsoft are pulling on, the fact that we already know what this technology is. We already like this technology because we use it in our personal life, and they're just trying to bring that into work. And I think that also comes with the new channel experience that you'll get on posts. The fact that it's not here yet, but the fact that they're now flipping it upside down as such, so that rather than your newest post being at the bottom of your team post tab, it will now be at the top. That's more like the LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram thing that we're used to. So I think these things are going to take a little bit of getting used to, but because we're already using them in our personal life, I don't know that it's going to be so much of a jump as other things that we've adopted will be as well. But that's just my personal opinion, and we've got to see that all being used in anger and actually adopted first.
Yeah, I think some areas, it's an area where we need to revisit our communication charters in the organizations to say, like, this is how we're going to use this technology and this way of communicating across our organization, and establish what is appropriate and what's not for those areas. So yeah, but I'm excited about that whole storyline thing. And Barry, you kicked it off really here, didn't you, with sharing some stuff around product strategy, and it's just the right place for that kind of thing. So I can choose to see that or not see that, of course, I will sign up to follow Barry if he's talking about technology. But it's a walled garden where everyone can share what they want to, and you've got control of what you see. So I really think that's going to develop quite a lot into over the next few months.
And for
I
people
think
that are listening that aren't on Yammer with our company, the latest toy I bought my dog was a tennis ball with a rope on it, in case you're interested.
Thanks.
so. Maybe that's something that us three and all of those that are listening to this podcast or watching the video can commit to. Go and check out Storylines, share a little bit of what you're working on, share a little bit of you. Let us know next podcast how it goes, how that's going for you. What I was really surprised to see is the amount of interaction that I got on my first Storyline post. I expected it to be one of these things like sometimes on social media, you post something, you don't get one like, you don't get any comments, and I got a bunch of interaction, and I got a bunch of likes and other reactions to the post. So maybe it is something that people are kind of wanting to feel that connection. So there you go. That's my challenge to you all. That's the New Year challenge that I'm setting everybody. Just give Storylines a go, see how it goes, and then maybe it will take off in the rest of your organisation.
I would just say, because of the legacy of Yammer, some of these things just don't work to start with. As I start a project on Yammer with the organisations, the first thing I have to do is to check that they've been created in the EU geographic area, not in the American area, which was the default before. I think because of the history of Yammer, where it was a third-party product that was then bought by Microsoft and then was stagnant for a long time and recently has only just kicked in. So it wasn't originally built around Microsoft 365 groups and things like that. If you've got problems setting things up in there, then there may be some fundamental things that need resetting that we can help you with. So do reach out to myself or one of the other team of the ComputerWorld team for that.
Definitely. And there are some new features due to come in Storylines. I think the ability to kind of do daily videos and things like that, like we see on most social platforms, like Facebook and LinkedIn, etc., will be coming in the new year as well. So good example to try and get that working. If you challenge them, we can give you a hand with that. Megan, so you've got another meeting related feature, I think now, something to do with whiteboards.
Yeah, so what you're now able to do, and this was introduced not too long ago, is that you're now able to open up pre-existing whiteboards within a Teams meeting. So typically the way that it used to work is when you clicked the share tray and then whiteboard, it would open up a brand new whiteboard in that meeting, and then that's what people would work on. However, there are times that you want to almost pre-prepare a whiteboard, maybe with some of the templates Microsoft give us. And then if you wanted to share that in the meeting, you'd have to share a link for everyone to access the whiteboard, but it wouldn't be in the meeting. You'd just like share your screen of the whiteboard. And it was a sort of workaround that we had to do. Now, if you pre-prepared a whiteboard and then clicked the share tray and then whiteboard in that meeting, it allows you to either choose a brand new whiteboard or one of your pre-existing ones. And what I also think is a really good use case for that is if we were planning this podcast and we had a whiteboard for that, we could plan that, have a whiteboard, and then when we come back to next month to plan the next one, we could open up the same whiteboard and continue using that in there as well. So the fact that you're now able to open up existing whiteboards in a Teams meeting is just really good, and it means that collaboration is a lot more fluid rather than just being a brand new whiteboard in a meeting that we used to have.
Brilliant. No, I think that's a great functionality. Great to see whiteboard going from strength to strength, and hopefully that feature comes to the Teams rooms as well soon, where you'll be able to click the whiteboard and then go and pick a whiteboard out of your OneDrive or something like that, maybe.
Yeah.
But great to have the whiteboard button. Just going to change the last two round a bit. Anthony, to come to you now. Some new features in Teams telephony, I think.
Yes, I think Teams telephony is an area that I've been spending a lot of time working on recently. And I would just say it just works. I've spent a lot of time, in my business career, sat with a computer on my desk and with a telephone handset. And I now don't need that anymore. People just moving seamlessly between Teams calls that, like we're on a conference call at the moment, and using the normal telephone network, and they're just able to move from that, seamlessly using the same headset, just using their PC as the main termination device for that. And that's been, revelation for lots of people. and it saves an absolute fortune in phone bills, because a lot of the calls we do nowadays are just Teams to Teams. But having that ability to break out into the traditional PSTN network does make a big difference as well. So it does just work, and there's no challenge that we've come across up until now which we haven't been able to address. The things like auto attendance that are embedded in there, the call queuing and the flexibility of call queues and building those queues is really, really good, and there's a lot of detail in there. Things like the ability to show whichever DDI number as CLI number as you want to on a particular call queue, and things like that are very, very good. And there's a lot of simplification gone in how we actually attach these things to the traditional telephone network. The operator connect stuff is coming on leaps and bounds. The ability just to go and choose which supplier you want to use and to automatically configure from that has taken away all of that stuff that we used to have to think about with session border controllers and configuring voice channels and things like that. Voice recording is probably the bit that's missing the most at the moment. We can kind of on demand record any call that we want to, but if we want mandatory 24/7 communication, then we will work with carriers to deliver that functionality and things around PCI compliance. But yeah, it's a real serious telephony system. The uptake on numbers is very serious and very significant now. The number of people who are using the Teams telephony solution. And if you're thinking or getting to the point where you've got to replace your telephone system, then just talk to us, because I can assure you that we'll be able to come up with a solution which will be embedded in Teams and will work really, really well for you, and will be almost seamless to the way in which people work, whether they're sat in the office, whether they're sat at home, or whether they're out on a mobile device. So yeah, thoroughly recommend looking at telephony, and there's some really, really good functionality in there.
Brilliant. Love a bit of calling in Teams. Makes life so much easier as an end user, and great to see those releases this year, such as the Carrier Connect, simplifying it for IT administrators setting that up. So the last and final feature, until maybe we go to the best of the rest, is so in the Office app, if for those of you that don't know the Office app, I think it's one of the most underused applications that all of your users should know about. If you go type Office, it's available there. It's also available at office.com. But if you've got Office on your computer, just use the app on your computer. It's quicker and easier to get to. It's the best place to go and search for anything in Microsoft 365. You can't remember where you've saved that document. Is it in your OneDrive? Is it in a team? Which team is it in? Go and search for it there. You can then filter it to only show Word documents, etc. And it has previously shown you a proportion of your recently opened files. It now has infinitive scroll on it. So you're able to see documents that have been sent to you, that have been shared with you in an infinitive scroll, which is so, so helpful. You're able to open up templates and start documents from there as well. I believe the ability for company templates to appear there is coming soon as well. I haven't seen that implemented in person, but I've not gone and looked on the back end yet to see how that would be administered. So it might be available as well. One thing to note is it will be changing to the Microsoft 365 app, I think, in the new year. So when you can't find the Office app, look for the Microsoft 365 app. I believe it's much the same with a bit more of the good functionality that it's got. I don't know if either of you have got any thoughts or opinions about the Office app. As I say, it's one of my most loved applications.
I was going to say, I didn't know it was there for a long time, and then I couldn't live without it now. Just use it all the time. So yeah, I was always just going back into the waffle to find things, but I just hit type office.com or go to the Office app and use that now. It's a far more flexible way to access everything that's in Microsoft 365.
Yeah, and I think the fact that what you said there, Barry, there's so many places we save documents now, whether it's in my OneDrive, your OneDrive, SharePoint, anything like that. The fact that you can just go in and you can filter it by, I think it was in SharePoint or I think it was in OneDrive. But I think my favourite bit is if you know it's something that was shared in a meeting, you can filter by just meetings now. So you can, on the left-hand side, when you're in that infinite scroll, you can click meetings and it shows just the files that shared via meetings. And I just think that's incredibly useful because there's so many things so many times that a meeting chat files, all of that just lands in your chat because it hasn't been added as part of a channel. That once you've got all those chats, that filters down the list and then eventually gets missed or disappears. The fact that you can now filter by meetings is really useful. So I think that's a nice new feature on top of the infinite scroll for the Office app as well.
Fantastic. So I think those were our top features. Those are the ones that kind of made the grade into our list of top features that were actually released in 2022. But as we bring this podcast to the close, let's do around the room. What are the best of the rest? I think Megan's itching probably with a list of another 10 to tell us about. But Megan, what are the final one or two that you want to share?
So the one that I'm not sure how it didn't make it on the list, because it's definitely been my thing this year, especially towards the last sort of few months of the year, is live speaker coach. So the fact that in meetings now you can turn live speaker coach on, and it gives you live updates to say you're talking a bit fast, slow down. The thing I always tend to say is you guys, and actually that's not inclusive of everybody. It tells you when you're using filler words or repetitive language. The fact that it does it live, but you also get the report on the back end of the meeting just for you, that I can go and have a look at, and it flags to me things that I'm not even aware of, that mean that I can make changes to be a better presenter, to be more inclusive, and to be more engaging for the audience I'm presenting to or talking to on a meeting, is just great. So how that didn't make it in the list, I'm not sure, because I'd probably say that's in my top 3 new features. But anyway, that's probably my one, and I'll leave it at that because I don't want to steal anybody else's thunder.
So Anthony, have you got any best of the rest?
I've got to say, speaker coach, you either love it or hate it, and I'm not a great fan of it, but I do see the benefits of it. I fall into the you guys thing all the time, and ums and ers and things like that. And there's nothing more embarrassing than getting the speaker coach report through saying, you know, you're a bit boring. But no,
I've never had that.
Yeah. But the key areas that, you know, that I was going to add to this are things around Power Platform and the Power Apps as well. The recent Define Tomorrow conference that many of you will have come to recently, we used a Power App. I won't take all the credit for this because Barry wrote this, but just using a very simple Power App to be able to scan the badges when people visited the various booths in the exhibition area, and being able to track all of that information. We, you know, within no time, we're able to put together quite a sophisticated application, which was doing something that we could have gone to a third party and paid money for, or we could have just put a clipboard on every stand and said, could you write down the names of everyone who came and talked to you about a product and what they were interested in? But yeah, it just shows that ability to be able to put an application together, which has got a level of complexity and works really, really effectively. And then Power Automate as well, lots more functionality coming in to integrate different applications into Power Automate. And I'll be doing a training session on Power Virtual Agents later on in the beginning of next year. And we'll look at how you can use the chatbots in Teams as well. So yeah, the Power Platform, I think it will be one of my main focuses next year as it starts to develop and mature.
Brilliant. Some brilliant additional features there. I'm not going to go for any others. I think we've covered some fantastic features there that have been released this year, and I look forward to all the great features that have been promised to next year. So thank you ever so much, Megan and Anthony, for joining me on today's podcast. Thank you to everyone that has listened, subscribed. We really appreciate the you as listeners and also the input that you will give us. So once again, please make sure that you're following us, that you've given us a comment down below with your thoughts on this podcast and ideas for the future. Remember, this podcast is brought to you by ComputerWorld. We specialize in delivering modern workspace experiences. We're Microsoft 365 specialists. We've got trainers like Megan in-house. We can help you with your governance and your business consultancy with business consultants like Anthony. And we've got a fantastic team of technical consultants that can help deliver the projects for you. So if you are looking to get more out of Microsoft 365, you want to be more productive, help communication, collaboration, or secure what you're doing, please think about us at ComputerWorld. We'd love to be working with you in 2023. But for now, have a great Christmas, Happy New Year, and we look forward to speaking to you again in 2023.
Brilliant. Happy New Year, everyone.